Welcome back to From the Region with Richard Giragosian. This week's show, our latest installment of a weekly series of analytical programs, will examine recent developments in Armenia with implications for the broader South Caucasus region. There are three specific themes of this week's show, but first we will start with the recent visit to Armenia and regional tour of French President Sarkozy. The visit to Armenia was very significant beyond the normal reasons, beyond the visit of a head of state. What was most significant and revealing was President Sarkozy came to Armenia first. From Armenia went on to Azerbaijan and Georgia, but chose to come to Armenia for 2 days. What was most interesting was Sarkozy spent 2 days in Armenia and only 2 hours visiting Azerbaijan before going on to Georgia. The visit of President Sarkozy was very well organized by the French ambassador to Armenia and his staff. It was also well orchestrated by the Armenian diplomatic service and foreign ministry protocol staff. What's interesting, though, on this regional tour, it was as much about French domestic politics as it was about Armenian foreign policy. In many ways, President Sarkozy of France faces a very difficult and challenging re-election next year. In this context, the fact that there are 500,000 Armenians living in France represent important votes and important political domestic considerations for President Sarkozy's election. What we also see, however, is President Sarkozy, during his 2 days in Armenia, chose to make a very strong and clear demonstration to Turkey and to Azerbaijan. More specifically, while speaking in a joint press conference with the Armenian president, the French president made it clear that Turkey must admit and recognize the Armenian genocide. In fact, President Sarkozy even threatened Turkey by saying if Turkey didn't move toward recognition in the coming years, he would consider adopting a new law in France, making the denial of the Armenian genocide specifically a criminal offense. This is also important because it was a message to Azerbaijan as well. Sarkozy and France represent one of the co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk group, the mediators dealing and managing the Karabakh conflict. Sarkozy made it very clear by staying 2 days in Yerevan, in contrast to 2 hours in Baku, made it very clear that Azerbaijan has to regain trust within the international community. What's also important is Sarkozy was very outspoken on his personal opinion and the French political stance that Turkey does not belong in the European Union. Sarkozy, speaking in Yerevan, also explained that Turkey is not located in Europe. It plays an important bridging role for the European Union with the Middle East, but does not necessarily deserve membership in the European Union. What's also interesting, during Sarkozy's time in Armenia, the French Interior Minister was visiting Turkey itself. That visit, understandably, was not very successful, but France and Turkey did sign a significant agreement, counter-terrorism agreement between France and Turkey, calling for bilateral moves and measures against the PKK, or the Kurdish Workers' Party, mainly in France. What's also interesting is the underlying context of the French president's visit to Armenia, because it was also not about just politics and foreign policy, but economics and commerce as well. We saw during the Sarkozy visit an announcement that France Telecom may be coming to Armenia, after which French investment in Armenia's telecommunications sector may significantly further increase. What's also important is a French commitment to possibly invest in the $5 billion project to build a new nuclear power plant in Armenia. One of the essential elements of Armenia's relationship with the European Union is the European Union's demand for the old and potentially dangerous Medzamord nuclear power plant to be closed and replaced by a more modern facility or by alternative energy. In the Armenian context, it seems rather clear that given the difficult energy situation, there is no alternative to nuclear power at this point. What is most interesting, however, is the Armenian president also hailed and welcomed the French interest in investing in a new nuclear power plant, which is also important because up until now, the Russians, who manage and control much of the Armenian energy sector, were thought to be the only candidate to build a new nuclear power plant. With this invitation by the Armenian president, we see new competition from the French and perhaps a more serious level of investment, especially as the Russian investors have pledged or promised merely to cover 20% of the cost of the $5 billion project. If Armenia is able to perhaps induce a more competitive bidding system, it may gain much more, and it would be a healthy element of competition in terms of who gets to build Armenia's next nuclear power plant. What's also important is the French telecom operator Orange has been in Armenia since the year 2009. In fact, invested over $50 million in the Armenian cell phone market. And there is some promise of greater French investment, and after French, inducing and attracting greater European Union investment. But what's interesting about the French president's visit was actually the timing. In terms of domestic Armenian politics, the opposition Armenian National Congress was waging a week-long series of demonstrations and sit-ins, protests. What's interesting was it was timed with the Sarkozy visit, sending also a message to the European Union. But secondly, there was a second topic or theme in recent weeks that's most important. This past Friday night, the Armenian soccer team won a very impressive victory, a 4-1 victory over a soccer team from the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. This was part of the Euro 2012 qualifying soccer matches. In fact, after this victory, Armenia will go on to Ireland and play the Irish team. And the victory was not only very successful, but the aftermath, the reaction among ordinary Armenians to this soccer victory was most important. In other words, last month, Armenia and the Armenian government specifically organized an impressive military parade, timed with Armenian Independence Day. It was successful in sending a message and a clear demonstration to Azerbaijan and the region, revealing the power and the strength of the Armenian armed forces. But that was a government-managed event. That parade and event, timed with independence, was very much state-orchestrated. What we saw now was just the opposite, a very spontaneous, very positive reaction to Armenia's football victory. What was most important was, for the first time in a very long time, there was a spontaneous demonstration of unity among all elements of Armenian society, with celebrations in central Yerevan lasting into late in the night, with many people smiling, enjoying, savoring the victory of the Armenian football team. What's also most important is it was spontaneous. It was a sense of hope and a sense of renewal. And in many ways, we need to sustain and capture that moment of glory and unity in terms of facing problems, yes, but also facing it from a unified approach, pan-Armenian in essence. But this brings us to the third topic of this week. Recently, Steve Jobs has passed away from a long battle with cancer. What's interesting about the lesson of Steve Jobs, and yes, there was an Armenian connection, he was adopted by Armenian parents. What is most important about Steve Jobs was this is a person who not only didn't graduate from university, but didn't follow the mainstream thinking. In other words, why the death or life of Steve Jobs is so essential or important for Armenia is it shows that innovation, creativity are inherently nonconformist, do not follow the status quo. This is a man in terms of an innovator like Bill Gates who led technological change, who had the vision and courage to not only believe in himself, but believe that he had the power to change the world. And in many ways, people like him are needed in Armenia. We need more people like Steve Jobs in the Armenian context who can believe that they can change things for the better. Because in most cases, these people who challenge the status quo and believe that they can be agents of change normally do change the world. And in fact, the only way that the world progresses or that countries change for the better is from people who believe that they can make a difference and who care enough to commit themselves to improving the situation and actually daring to dream, taking bold visions and bold sacrifices in some cases and making it real. In this way, the message of Steve Jobs' death is equal to his life, that there needs to be greater attention to science, education, sectors of innovation and advancement and progress in Armenia, rather than the consumer-based society of the West that Armenia seems to imitate. In other words, instead of glorifying the oligarch, we need to glorify the inventor, the innovator, the entrepreneur, small and medium-sized businesses instead of oligarchic-style corporations. What we also need in Armenia is a fresh approach to daring and to be bold enough to dream big and to believe in the individual Armenian's capacity to change the country for the better. This is where progress comes from in every country, but this is also the challenge to real change. It cannot come from above. It must come from below. Thank you for joining us this week. This is From the Region with Richard Giragosian, and until next week.